AITA for refusing to let my sister attend my no-kids wedding when she showed up with her toddler. Even after I told her 3 times it wasn't allowed. I, 30F, got married last Sunday, and from the very start of planning, my husband and I were clear about one thing. No kids at the wedding, except nursing infants. It wasn't because we hate kids or wanted to exclude families. We had very real, practical reasons. The venue we chose was small and intimate, which was exactly the kind of atmosphere we wanted, but it also meant that space was limited. There was a balcony with a low railing, which immediately raised safety concerns in my mind. The caterer needed precise seating arrangements because food service was going to be tightly scheduled. Every guest had an assigned seat, every table was mapped out, and the plan left almost no wiggle room. And on top of that, every extra plate would cost us $75. When you're working within a budget, that's not a trivial amount, especially not if we had multiple people asking to bring kids. We genuinely couldn't swing it. So early on, when people asked if children could come, we politely but firmly said no. Most of our friends and family accepted it. Some grumbled a little, but they understood once I explained the reasoning. To me, it wasn't about judgment. It wasn't kids aren't welcome because they're annoying. It was strictly logistics and safety. The problem was my sister, L, 33F. She has a very active 3-year-old, and from the start, she wasn't happy with the rule. She asked me not once, not twice, but 3 separate times to make an exception for her. Each time, I gave her the same answer, no. I always try to frame it kindly, explaining the seating arrangements, the safety hazard with the balcony, and the cost of extra plates. I made sure she knew I wasn't rejecting her child personally, just that it was an across-the-board rule. But even as I repeated myself, I could see the frustration in her face. She sighed, she frowned, she clearly felt slighted. Eventually, she dropped it. At least that's what I thought. I figured she found childcare and moved on. I remember feeling relieved when she stopped bringing it up because it had been one of the few points of tension during the otherwise happy lead-up to the wedding. In my head, the issue was settled. The boundary had been set. I had explained myself, and though she didn't love it, she seemed to have accepted it. I let myself believe that by the time the big day came, we'd all be on the same page. Looking back now, I realized that assumption was naive. The thing about my sister is that she's persistent. When she wants something, she doesn't just ask once and drop it. She circles back, rephrases it, tries again a different way. And that's exactly what happened with the wedding. The first time she brought it up was over lunch a few months before the big day. She said casually, "So, I was thinking, obviously you'll make an exception for me, right? I mean, it's your nephew." I had to swallow hard before answering. I hated being put on the spot like that, but I reminded her gently, we're not having kids at the wedding, except for infants who need a nurse. It's nothing personal. It's just the way the venue works out. Her face tightened. "So my son's not welcome?" I rushed to clarify. "It's not about him not being welcome. It's about space, safety, and budget. You know how active he is. The balcony railing is low, and the caterer needs exact numbers for plates. It's just not something we can manage." She sighed loudly, as if I had just insulted her child. But she didn't argue further. The second time came a few weeks later on the phone. She brought it up more directly this time. "I still don't get why you can't just squeeze him in. It's not like one kid is going to ruin anything." I repeated my reasons: small venue, safety hazards, cost. I even mentioned that other family members with kids had already arranged sitters. I told her it wouldn't be fair to say yes to her and no to everyone else. She muttered, "You're being ridiculous," and changed the subject. The third time, just a week before the wedding, was the hardest. She called me in the middle of the day and asked one more time, her voice sharper than before. "Are you really going to make me miss your wedding because I don't have childcare? Do you even hear yourself?" I felt my chest tighten with stress. "Oh, please don't put it like that. Of course I want you there. I love you. But this rule isn't about excluding you. It's about making sure the day runs smoothly. I need you to trust me on this." She went quiet for a moment, then said, "Fine, whatever. I guess I'll figure something out." When she hung up, I sat there staring at my phone, feeling awful. I didn't want to be that bride who caused drama over rules. But at the same time, I had to hold the line. If I bent it for her, what would stop other people from doing the same? And beyond fairness, the logistics were real. We literally didn't have a seat for an extra guest. By the time the wedding week rolled around, I thought the matter was settled. She had said she'd figure something out, and I took that to mean she had arranged childcare. I let myself exhale, relieved to think that one of the few lingering stressors was resolved. But deep down, I knew the tension hadn't really gone away. The way she had spoken, the bitterness in her voice, it told me she wasn't happy. And I should have realized that unhappy people don't always accept boundaries, even when you've explained them 100 times. What I didn't expect was just how far she was willing to push it when the actual day arrived. The morning of the wedding was already hectic. I was in the bridal suite getting my hair done, surrounded by bridesmaids, makeup artists, and the usual swirl of chaos. My phone was buzzing nonstop with texts from vendors and family members, and I was doing my best to stay calm and enjoy the moment. That's when the coordinator knocked on the door. She stepped in quietly, but I could see from her face that something was wrong. "We have a situation," she said. My stomach dropped. "What happened?" She hesitated. "Your sister just arrived with her toddler and a stroller." For a second, I didn't even process the words. I blinked at her, my hair half pinned, a curling iron buzzing behind me. "Wait, what?" "She's at the front desk right now," the coordinator explained. "She's not on the approved guest list because of the no kids policy. The staff won't check her in without your approval. If we let her in, there's no seat assigned. We'd have to reshuffle at least 2 tables, and it would throw the caterer's timing off." I felt my heart pound. I had said no. I had explained it 3 separate times. She had said she'd figure something out. And yet here we were, on the actual day of my wedding, minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle, facing the exact problem I had tried to avoid. I wanted to scream, but instead I asked, "What are the options?" The coordinator laid it out carefully. "We can enforce the policy. She would either need to attend the ceremony only and leave before the reception, or come back without the child. Otherwise, we'd have to rearrange tables and inform catering." It was like a nightmare. None of these choices were good. If I bent the rules, the entire reception seating plan would be thrown off, and word would spread instantly that the no kids rule was flexible. I could already imagine the grumbling. Why did she get to bring her kid when we had to pay for babysitters? On the other hand, if I enforced the boundary, my sister would be humiliated. People would see her being turned away. She'd never forgive me. I stood there, frozen, staring at the coordinator. My bridesmaids glanced at me, wide-eyed, clearly grateful it wasn't their decision to make. Finally, I said the words I knew would break something between us. "Enforce the policy." The coordinator nodded quickly. "Understood. We'll handle it." She slipped out of the room, leaving me with a pit in my stomach. A few minutes later, one of my cousins, who had been near the front, came to update me quietly. The coordinator had explained the options to my sister: attend the ceremony only, or come back without the toddler. My sister hadn't taken it well. She argued, saying she felt humiliated, that it wasn't fair. In the end, she turned around and left. She didn't even stay for the ceremony. When I heard that, my heart sank. I had wanted her there. Despite everything, I had hoped she would at least watch me walk down the aisle, stand with our family, celebrate the day. But instead, she was gone because she had chosen to test a boundary that I had made crystal clear. As I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress, I tried to smile, to stay in the moment. But in the back of my mind, all I could hear was her voice from our phone call a week earlier. "Are you really going to make me miss your wedding because I don't have childcare?" And now, it seemed, the answer was yes. The ceremony itself was beautiful. I walked down the aisle, said my vows, and tried to soak in every moment. On the surface, everything went perfectly. But beneath the smiles and the photos, there was a knot in my stomach. I couldn't shake the thought that my sister wasn't there. Not in the audience, not in the family photos, not a part of one of the biggest days of my life. When the reception began, the whispers started. A few cousins asked quietly where my sister was. My parents looked tense and distracted, and eventually, my mom pulled me aside. "She left," my mom said, her voice low but sharp. She felt humiliated. "You could have just made an exception, just this once. For family." I felt my chest tighten. "Mom, you know the rules. We've been clear from the beginning. If I bent them for her, it would have been unfair to everyone else who respected the boundary and paid for sitters." My dad joined in, his tone calmer, but still disappointed. "We understand you wanted things a certain way, but sometimes flexibility is better than rigidity. She's your sister. It was your wedding day. Was it really worth it?" I stood there in my gown, torn between wanting to defend myself and wanting to cry. I had done what I thought was necessary for the sake of the wedding, for the safety of the venue, for the fairness of all guests. And yet, in my parents' eyes, I was the one who had failed. Later that night, after the last dance and the send-off, I checked my phone. There was a message from my sister. "You made me feel like a second-class guest, like I wasn't your sister anymore, just another name on a list. You care more about rules and appearances than about me. I had to choose between being a mom and being your sister, and you decided for me that I couldn't be both." Reading those words hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't that I didn't expect her to be upset. I had braced for that, but the way she framed it, as if I had deliberately pushed her out of my life, cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I typed back carefully, trying not to sound defensive. I told her I was sorry for how public it felt, sorry that she felt humiliated. But I also said I stood by the boundary. I explained again that it wasn't about her child being unwelcome, but about logistics, safety, and fairness to all the guests. She didn't respond. In the days that followed, my parents kept bringing it up. My mom replayed the scene again and again, how my sister had stood at the front desk, how the coordinator had explained the options, how she turned and walked away. She said it was cold and unnecessary. I wanted to scream that it wasn't my fault. Then my sister knew the rule, that she had asked 3 times and been told no, that she chose to test it on the one day when there was no room for negotiation. But every time I tried to explain, I was met with looks of disappointment, as if I had ruined my own wedding by being too stubborn. And maybe in a way I had, not because the day itself wasn't beautiful. It was, but because the absence of my sister hung over me like a shadow, and I couldn't stop wondering if I'd made the right choice. In the days after the wedding, the photos started coming back. I flipped through them, me in my dress, my husband smiling, our friends and family clapping and laughing, and I wanted to feel nothing but joy. But every time I lingered on the family shots, there was a hole. My sister wasn't in them. Her chair sat empty, and no matter how much I told myself it was her decision to leave, the guilt crept in. I kept replaying the moment the coordinator came into the bridal suite. What if I had said yes? What if I had told him to let her through, even if it meant squeezing an extra chair, reshuffling tables, annoying the caterer? Would the day have gone off just the same, only without the bitterness? Would my parents have smiled instead of frowning? Would my sister have hugged me instead of texting me later that I made her feel like a second-class guest? It's easy in hindsight to imagine the flexible version of me, smiling, saying, of course, just let her in. But the reality is that the logistics were real. The tables were tightly arranged, the balcony railing was a hazard, and the cost of extra plates wasn't something we could absorb casually. I had spent months planning, budgeting, and communicating those boundaries. If I had caved, wouldn't that have been unfair to the cousins and friends who respected the rule and went through the trouble of finding childcare? And yet, she's my sister. That's the thought that keeps echoing in my mind. She's my sister, and she missed my wedding. Not because she didn't want to be there, but because she felt shut out, embarrassed, unwelcome. From her perspective, it doesn't matter how many times I explain the logistics. What she sees is that when her childcare fell through, I didn't bend for her, that I chose rules over her, that I left her standing at the door, being told she could either ditch her child or go home. And I hate that image. I hate picturing her feeling humiliated in front of strangers, watching other guests walk past her into the celebration she wasn't allowed to join. Part of me wonders if I should have been more proactive. Maybe I should have called her that morning just to confirm her childcare situation instead of assuming she'd figured it out. Maybe I should have offered to help arrange a sitter myself, or even had one on standby. Anything to avoid the scene that played out. But then I remind myself, that wasn't my responsibility. She knew the rules. She had months to prepare. She had asked 3 times, and I'd said no 3 times. At some point, it wasn't my job to fix her problem. It was hers. Still, the guilt lingers. Because weddings aren't just about logistics and rules. They're about family, about love, about connection. And in trying to protect my day, I lost a part of that. Now I find myself stuck between 2 truths. 1, I was right to set and enforce boundaries that matter for the safety, fairness, and success of the wedding. And 2, enforcing those boundaries came at a cost, and that cost was my relationship with my sister. And I don't know which truth weighs heavier. Now that the wedding is over and the dust is settled, I keep going back and forth in my head. On one hand, I know the boundary was clear from the very beginning. I said no kids except infants, and I explained the reasons multiple times: safety, space, budget, fairness. My sister had months to make childcare arrangements, and other parents in the family managed to do so without issue. From that perspective, I don't feel like I was unfair. On the other hand, it hurts that she wasn't there. I wanted her to celebrate with me, to stand by my side on one of the most important days of my life. Instead, she left angry and humiliated, and now she thinks I care more about rules than I do about her. I did apologize for how public it all felt, but I also stood by my boundary. And maybe that's what's eating me up, that even though I believe I was right, I can't shake the guilt. Was I too rigid? Should I have bent the rules just once for family, even if it caused chaos? Or was it reasonable to stick to what I'd said all along, knowing the risks of letting it slide? So I'm left wondering, AITA for asking the venue to turn my sister away when she showed up with her toddler, even though I had been clear about the no kids rule from the start?